Q&A. I'm your host, Jay. We're here every weekday, well, most weekdays, starting at 10 a.m. Eastern. And so today we're here with the Quest M3, where we're going to be roasting with the Quest M3. This is a home coffee roaster that is, let me adjust this a little bit more, that is, it has a 200 gram capacity and works actually pretty darn well. Man, I really feel like I'm getting all crunchy there. Let's move this down a little bit. Let me just adjust our settings here. Hopefully that's better. Is that better? Does that work? Okay, good. So the Quest M3 is actually sold by Sweet Maria's here in the United States. It is a Taiwanese-made coffee roaster made with all stainless steel components. And it's actually a really great little roaster. Like if you want to understand roasting like a professional gas-fired drum roaster, even though this is actually electric, this is probably the closest thing that you're going to get to it. You can also get the Illyrio Bullet. Is probably a nice one to go with as well. That's a lot more expensive, I think. Is that right? I don't actually know how much that one is. This one you can buy, I think, brand new, about $1,200 to $1,300. What's up, Keone? How are you, man? Good to see you. And it's great. I bought this particular one used a few years back. One of my friends, Nanelle Newbaum, she's the owner now of Torque Coffee. She had this and she was selling it, and she was like, "It's anyone interested in buying?" I was like, "Whoa, how much? All right, I'll buy it." Because I've always liked the idea of having a good sample roaster, and the sample roasters that I really like are the twin barrel Probats or Jabez Burns. But to buy those, they're quite expensive. Like they can cost upwards of $15,000. So there has to be some level of compromise, and 200 grams is just the right size for sample roasting, and it's a great size for home roasting. Now, when you buy the roaster, there's some things it doesn't come with, like this temperature probe that you see here. That does, I believe that is extra, and then I think that's really the biggest extra. Now there are two models now. When I bought this, there was only the M3. Now there's something called the M6. And the M6 has a larger capacity of 550 grams. I guess they say M6 because it's maybe 600 grams, but 550 grams, and it just has bigger capacity, but supposedly it operates the same way. Now, how this roaster works, let's go through the components of it. So you've got the main barrel here, and inside the barrel is a drum as well as the heating elements. Now, this is a 120 American specification electric heater roaster. So there's heating elements inside the barrel that surround the drum. Now I'm actually not sure if it surrounds it. I think it only surrounds a part of it. I think on the back part of it. But that is controlled by this voltmeter here. You can kind of see the controls, but you can see here the amp meter here shows how much current we're delivering. This function here is kind of the off and on switch. It's actually a timer, a mechanical timer that once it rotates all the way closed, it shuts off. So when you're at the 3 o'clock position, this is supposedly about 30 minutes of operation, 15, 10, and then it clicks off like that. So if you happen to run out, you just got to twist it. From my perspective as a professional roaster, I do find that to be a little bit irritating. Good morning, Mom. How are you? I find it to be a little bit irritating only because I'm just used to having roasters that you have an off and on switch and you let them run and you don't have to worry about it. Whereas this, you do have to kind of monitor a little bit as far as when it's going to shut off. This other thing down here, this other controller, this is your fan speed control. It doesn't really change more than 8, and goes down to about 3, so you can't really hear it changing its speed, but that's what it does. And then of course the amp meter, and then there's a little fan under here to cool the electronics, because the whole roaster is going to be pretty hot. The heating elements are here. The motor is back here as well that turns the drum. And then let's look on the front side. On the front side of the roaster, we have, of course, the face of the drum. There's also the drum bearings. So you want to just drop a couple drops of oil here every once in a while. There's a sight glass so you can see the coffee as it's roasting. And then the drum door handle And then you can kind of see the spinning drum. It's slightly warped. I don't know, probably some kind of abuse at some point in his life, or sometimes that happens when you get overheated and you kind of let it run without you. The nice thing about this little roaster is that it has a little trier. What do you call this? A trier in the business, and it just allows you to pull samples. So it always faces down so that coffee doesn't get stuck in it during the roast process. But once you use it, you just turn it over, and then you'll pull your sample, and you can look at it. It's pretty small. It doesn't hold that much coffee, but it is a nice way to get in there. And if you're familiar with the sample roasters from like Probat and Jabez Burns, you would normally use like a spoon to go inside the barrel because the barrel's open, and just pull a little sample to look and put it back. So that just kind of saves that a little bit. There is a little bit of a mesh shroud here because the drum will get hot. It will burn you if you touch it. So this just kind of helps to protect it. How this works is that there is a fan. Right? How does this work? Oh no, there's no fan. There's a suction. There's a fan in here. The fan is in here, and it's essentially causing a suction from this tube. So it's pulling the air through the drum barrel up, out, and then out this way. So there's a feed tube here. This opens up, and you'll put the coffee in here to load your drum. And then this is a cooling tray. So what happens is after we're finished our roast, we're gonna take this cooling tray, very like old school, kind of like what you'd find on like an old Royal roaster, but in a much smaller size. And so you dump your coffee out, and then it goes on top here, where it then uses the fan to cool the coffee. And that's pretty much the basic procedure or the basic components of this roaster. It's very, very simple. That's the nice thing about coffee roasting. It's relatively a simple kind of operation. Nothing too crazy. Let me just see if did I miss anyone? Okay, no, okay, good. All right, so now what we also have here is a digital thermometer. Now, the thermometer I normally use with this is this one, which was working fine last night when I tested it. When I plugged it in and turned it on today, well, it started to give me error messages. I think the battery, oh yeah, look at that, 666. It's giving me error messages that there is an issue. So like when I plugged it in, I'll turn that off first. When I plugged it in and turned it on, good morning, Dan, it just doesn't work. So I think I need to replace this one in this side. Yeah, I just need to replace the batteries on this one, but I don't have any 9-volt batteries for this. So back to the trusty Fluke 52, or 51 Mark II, which always works. And so now I'm preheating the drum here. I'm using Celsius because I've become a Celsius roaster over the years. Why that happened is because on my Petroncini, when I first received it, all it had was a analog gauge on the front. And the analog gauge for the exhaust temperature was all that we had. And so my friend Marty Curtis came down from an install that he was doing in New York City to help me install my roaster. And I was like, hey Marty, what about putting in like a bean probe so I can get the computer like everybody else has? And he's like, no, man, you need to like learn how to roast with your senses. So do that for a year, and then I'll come back and help you install it. And I was like, oh, all right. Marty's one of the mentors I have in the business, and so I was like, all right, I'll learn that. So I started doing that, and which meant that you're having to create the graphs that you see for a lot of people that use Artisan and Cropster and all that. You have to do that by, like the old school, you had to do it by hand. Like you would wait every minute, record the time, and then plot it on your graph paper and create a graph, create the curve physically. So I did that. I ended up doing that for like 8 years. So in 2016, that was in 2008 when we got the roaster. In 2016, I finally got around to buying a digital temperature probe and having that drilled in. I took it to a local machine shop, had it drilled into the face of the roaster, and then installed it. And I've been using that ever since. But having that time and experience roasting without the crux of a digital computerized plotting system was actually very, very invaluable, like tremendous. Like you really have to understand the sounds, the smells, and the way the roaster works, and then you have to correlate that because it's not when you're correlating roast degree to your only reference point of temperature, which is exhaust temperature on an analog scale. It's you really have to like learn it, and the only way to learn that is by doing lots of roasting on it. So while this is nice, it may not necessarily be the best way to learn, but you know what? And even on this one, like I could connect this to a plotting computer, but for this type of roasting, I never worry about that because, yeah. But the Celsius, so I learned how to roast in Celsius because of that, and now for me to roast in Fahrenheit is always a little bit more of a challenge because, it's always a lot of converting. Because I think about roasting in terms of Celsius, even though I think of the world, most of the world, like temperature-wise, it's like 75 degrees. But how is that correlating into temperature outside of Celsius? What is that, like 28? Is that right? 28? I know that 35 is getting hot, 37 and 40 is very hot. 50, you don't want to be there. All right, so we're rolling it along here. We're at about 129 degrees Celsius at the moment. We're going to let that roll up to about 205, maybe we're going to dig it 210. We're going to use this coffee today, like the coffee we talked about yesterday, this Rwenzori Bugoye washed coffee from Uganda. So let us get that prepared. So for this particular roast, I'm going to do 100 grams we're going to do 120 grams. Max capacity is 200 grams, so we can go to 120. Typically, if you want to do, when you're using a roaster that has a stated capacity, a lot of the practice has been to just use 60% of that. I'm sure that 100, well, no, that's 50%. Yeah, 120 would be about 60%, so that's good. So we're going to measure out our coffee. Let me just bring you in on that. So we've got our scale here. We've got our little tray for measuring. So we do 120 grams. There we go, 120. And then what we can do is we'll measure later. Moist, how's it going, man? How are things in Singapore? All right, so we've got our stuff measured out. And, if we look, let's look at this again. So the coffee itself is, this is very nicely sorted, very clean, very clean smelling. Like it's really just beautiful coffee. This is really beautifully done. It is really, really wonderful. Like this is pretty much ideal coffee for coffee production. Like the jade color is beautiful. Everything is clean. Everything is well sorted. It's all very uniform in size and shape. And gosh, this has got to be really good. We're at 140. Now I can turn up the temperature, the amps a little bit. I'll turn the amps up. I've been letting it slowly roast its way, heat itself up because it's probably better to always do a gradual heating of your roaster early on. Now, some roasters just don't afford for this. Like if you're using one of these popcorn popper home style roasters, and actually I was thinking maybe we'll roast on one of those tomorrow to give a comparison. But there's no real reheat. There's no heat up cycle for it necessarily. There's not really that much to heat up. Here you want to have the heating of the drum so that there's kind of like equilibrium, right? It's just everything's heated well, and hopefully it's not, once you get the drum totally heated and soaked in the heat, it tends to roast more consistently. Typically, your first roast of the day will not be as good as subsequent roast because the drum gets hotter and hotter and hotter. So one way to help to alleviate that is to heat your drum at a low temperature. I mean, at a low firing point, whether low on the amps or low on your gas delivery on a gas roaster for maybe an hour. And that gives you that time to warm up the drums so that you get a little bit more of a consistency in your roasting, right? So what we're doing is now I've got it almost up to 10 amps. I hope I don't blow my circuit breaker here. Another thing that's on here, there in the back, there is a circuit breaker somewhere on here. Oh yeah, by the plug in the back, so that if you start to draw too much power, the roaster will protect itself and shut off. All right. So what I also have here is to get into this tube. It's pretty small, and trying to pour this is a pretty bad practice. So what I have is, if you're familiar with this is the AeroPress funnel. AeroPress. I don't use it for AeroPress. I do tend to use it for this. Moise is asking, I missed some of the roasting. Actually, you haven't missed any of the roasting. We haven't begun yet. So the roast profile for this one, probably take it into a city plus. You know, I like, with a lot of the roasting, I like to bring coffees into more of a city roast, because now we're talking about a little more Maillard reaction development, caramelized reaction, getting a little bit more sweetness out of it, trying to keep a good airflow to blow the bad through. Now, of course, roasting at home for yourself is a very personal approach, right? So you can make it however you want. Like if you're like a fan of the Say style coffee or the Tim Wendelbo style of roasting, once you reach first crack, you can stop right there and be done with it. And then you're going to have your lightly roasted, very brightly done, or hopefully bright accents. If that's what you like, you should stop there and give it a try. I like it a little more development. I don't like high acid, high brightness. I'm not a big IPA guy. Can't stand it, right? I'd rather not have IPAs. I won't drink. If I have to drink beer and they have all of this IPA, give me Diet Coke. So it's all about yourself, right? It's all about you and what you like. And honestly, when you're roasting for yourself, what you like is all that matters. That is the most important thing. It's not about what's right or what's wrong according to someone else. Whether it's a blowhard like me on YouTube or some other blowhard out there in the world, none of that matters. All that matters is if you enjoy the coffee. All right, 189. We're getting close to the time of inception of our roast. Okay, we can put this aside because we don't need this till later. Now, right now we're running at 10 amps, which is pretty much full power. When we start our roast, I'm going to drill it down to maybe about 8 amps, because we do want to keep. Now, here's something. I have to adjust this timer because we've got to keep it rolling. Otherwise, it's going to shut off, and we don't really want to shut it off in the middle of the roast because, not that it'll quickly turn on, but any kind of glitch in your heat delivery to your coffee can have detrimental effects. Now, another factor that we have to consider in this particular situation at this very moment is that our ambient temperature is probably around 75 degrees, so that's why I'm wearing a sweater. I feel a little bit chilly, but also I'm getting good crosswinds. So basically, there is a light breeze that is blowing across the roaster. So that's going to affect how the roaster heats and maintains heat stability, right? If you're inside, if you're at the roastery like where I have, it's relatively stable. You're not getting crosswinds that are going to potentially affect the temperature of the roaster. It's a relatively ambient temperature, whether it's hot or cold, it's still relatively consistent, right? 212. All right, 212. We're going to start now. We'll let you get closer so you can see what's happening here. All right, time to begin. Time to begin. We're gonna get our bear timer. Trusty bear timer has come with us outside. Reset that. We are 216 now. I'm gonna open this up, put this here, and now we're gonna drop this in. Start our timer. Close that. Now I could be plotting this out, but I'm not plotting this today. Sorry. I actually didn't think about plotting it until just a few moments ago. But now we're going to move everything out of the way so that we can have space to roast. What happens now is that we have this green coffee, right? And the green coffee is about 10.5 to 11% moisture content. We have to drive most of that moisture out of the coffee to start to roast it, right? So this whole time here, like we pull the trier, we see the coffee is still very green. What's happening now is that we're in the drying phase where we are applying heat. I'm keeping it at full power because what's happening now is, and what you see in a lot of these, am I going? We will not pull the espresso shot. This is, well, I guess yeah, I'm not equipped for that. It would be very, sorry, it would be very difficult to do that at the moment. But I am prepared to brew it, but I don't have it available for the espresso. Logistically, it's much more complicated than me just going over there at the moment. My apologies on that. But like I was saying, so we're drying out the coffee. Oh, wait, there was another comment I think I saw. Let me just see here if I missed anyone. When I'm using the phone, it's not so... Peter Lee says he's roasting some too. Excellent, excellent, excellent. Okay, so what we're doing now, like I said, we're drying the coffee out. And we're reducing that... Well, eventually, we're reducing... Throughout the whole process, we are taking this coffee that's somewhere between 10 to 11% moisture content, and we're driving that moisture content down by heat to 2 to 3%. Now, that's why we have this change of a weight change, right? So typically, at Spro, we typically will prepare for 16%, 14 to 16% moisture content weight loss per batch. And so if we're in that range, not a big deal. If it's greater than that, then perhaps there's something wrong. We might start to look at other factors. Perhaps the roast was off. Perhaps the beans are somehow out of whack, right? What we don't want is the beans to we don't want beans to sit around and they drop to a moisture content of like 9%, right? Keone says, I've been toying with the idea of roasting my own beans, but not sure I want to go down that rabbit hole. I would say do not do that. This is only for the psychotics of the class. You know what? I don't know why I got into coffee. It was like, what was I thinking here? Anyway, so we are roasting. So we're driving it down. What we're planning to do, so we're at 160. We started at what? 215. So 160. Are we going up? Oh yeah, we've already reached the turning point. Now, the turning point that people talk about is kind of artificial, right? In the drum, we've heated the drum up to, we've heated the drum to 216 Celsius. Then we added this coffee that perhaps is like 75 degrees or 28 degrees. We've added that, and now we're driving. And so there's a point where those two have to meet. And so we are, in some ways, the drum is getting colder because you've added this cold component to it. But it's kind of a misnomer, right? So once we get that turning point, that's really where it just kind of meets its equilibrium. And now we're starting to apply heat to the coffee to roast it. Now I'm going to turn down the heat just a little bit, down to the 8 that I was saying by the amp meter. I'm going to turn our timer switch back up so that we don't have to worry about it. We're at 180 degrees. So we're at 180 degrees. We are flying. I think we're flying. 4 minutes. We should be in kind of a hay phase. Yeah, we're getting close to that. Oh, we're past that. Oh, we're going way too fast. If we look here, we're going way fast. I'm going to slow it down even more. I'm dropping it down to half power, almost to 5. Oh yeah, we're really flying through this roast. We're flying. We're already getting to the point of. So what happens is we dry the coffee out. It goes through a green. It starts with green. It goes to yellow, and then it starts to become tan and then brown. Right, and that browning is the Maillard reaction. And throughout this whole process, this whole point, coffee is very endothermic, so it's absorbing the heat. It's absorbing the heat, absorbing the heat, absorbing the heat, and then it'll only absorb so much heat, and then it becomes exothermic and start like there's a. I don't know if you can hear that, but we're starting to hear this cracking, this popping. We're at 5 minutes 37 seconds. We are way too fast, way too fast. This is something I want to see like at 9 minutes, not at under 6. But if you can hear that popping, we're just starting what we call first crack. And so now the coffee is expanding, explosively expanding. That's where you get this pop, kind of like how popcorn will pop. And you're hearing it now. It's going to start off slow, like a popcorn pop. It's going to start slow, 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 a little bit faster, a little bit faster. And then there'll be a point of pop, 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 pop. That's going to be your first crack. I don't know if you can hear that or not. Moist Tunnels was asking what coffee we're using. We're using the Uganda Rwenzori Bugoye that we were looking at yesterday. It is a sample that was given to me by Genuine Origin as consideration for purchase. So as a professional coffee roaster that buys theoretically a lot of coffee, a lot of the importers will send me samples of coffees that I'm interested in, free of charge. Now, I know a lot of people that are home, they're like, oh, that must be great. Well, I mean, it's good. We got samples, but they only do that really because you're going to buy lots of coffee. Okay, now we're getting there a little bit more. It's getting more robust. It looks like it's actually getting darker. 200, we're 200 degrees, so we're going pretty darn fast. Like, I don't like it to be this fast. We're at 7 minutes. This is going to be the kind of like speed that I'll find on, like, I was talking about doing the home roaster, the popcorn style popcorn home roaster tomorrow. This is the kind of speed where it would be that. Now that has that popping never got really heavy, probably because it's not much quantity. But now that's kind of fallowed out. Now we're heading towards second crack. You can see here, a little bit darker. Oh, now we're stalling. That's not good. I just noticed it was holding at 200. Now it's kind of dropped down to 199. We're stalling. So that adjustment of the heat was too low of an adjustment, because that's a bad thing. So I'm going to put this because we're going to be close to it. Now we're going to not worry so much about the temperature, and just look at the color. And I think we're pretty much, I want to stop now. I think that's a good place to stop, only because I'm not terribly happy with the roast at the moment. And this is, like I was saying, when you start off with roasting, this is, like your first roasted day, it's always going to be kind of like this. First roast may be a little bit off, especially if you, then this is, honestly, this is a roaster that I don't get to use very often. All right, we're going to be done now. 8 minutes, 9, we're going to 9 minutes, ow, son of a, be careful with all the surfaces. We're dropping at basically 198, 199. So we kind of had a stall because of the way that I was doing the heat delivery. So once you put this down, right, now we're going to put this on top of here and allow the roaster to cool it. So to be honest with you, I think that's a bit disappointing as far as, Craig, good morning to you. As far, oh, that hurts. Yeah, this, be careful. Like I just touched the top of that and burned myself. Let's turn that down again. What we're gonna do is we're gonna do one more roast to see what happens with it. Did I miss somebody else's thoughts? Oh, sorry, what I missed. What's the name of the roaster? Oh, yeah, Quest M3. Thank you, Craig. Thank you, Craig. So we're just gonna let that sit there for a few moments, and we're going to. What we're gonna do is we're gonna see once this coffee cools down, we're going to see how much of a weight loss that we incurred. Of course, I don't have a calculator. We'll just have to figure it out, right? All right, here's our coffee. Oh, it's still hot. It's still hot. Let's continue cooling. I think it's rather ingenious that you could put this on here. This is electric. So we're using an amp meter. There's an amp meter right here. And this is an electronic control for the current that we're adding. Now here's something that, depending on the load that's happening and depending on some of the conditions, it's not always very precise. Like in the position of this is not always precise. So you do want to use the amp meter, or you can use a kilowatt, right? Kilowatt, that thing you plug in to if you want to see more precisely how much current you're drawing. I tend not to worry so much about that. All right, so what we're going to do next time, we're not going to hit it with as much heat when we start off. We're not going to hit with so much heat. Good, definitely good for light roast. Actually, it's good for roasting all the way around. The nice thing about this roaster is that it can handle pretty much anything you want to do with it, much like a larger professional roaster would do. The nice thing about this, so the next time we're going to do another roast, we're going to go not so hard on the heat. We're going to start about the same thing, 215, which is right around 415, 410, right? 420, somewhere right around there in Fahrenheit. And then we're going to hopefully, and we're not going to have, like I was running at 10 amps to begin with, so we're going to drop it down to 8 and then go at it hopefully a little bit longer. We want to see it, like we finished at 9. I would like to see it take another 2 minutes of development to get that better development. I think 9 minutes is a bit on the fast side. So as you can see here, it's still, let's turn that heat up, and that lower speed up. So Quest M3, nice roaster. We're just waiting for this to cool down. Oh, I need something to hold this stuff. Hold on a minute. Need to grab some bags so we can put the coffee in somewhere. All right. Yeah, that's pretty cool. Let's have a look at that. We had, what's the temperature now? 193. I gotta be careful. All right, so we're gonna look at this. We got, we put in 120 grams, right? And now, out of the roaster, 102. So we lost, about 16% or so. Is that right? About somewhere right around there. So not, we lost a little bit, but we lost you know, an acceptable amount, an expected amount. So here's our coffee. Looks pretty good. I'm going to put this in the bag so that. All right, now we're going to do another roast. Since we're 199. Now I can turn it up a little bit. I'm going to bring it up to the 8 mark. This is a good thing while you want to get samples, or if you're a professional, you want to order samples from a place that's going to give you 350 grams, because if you mess up like I did, like I would say that's a mess up. I'm not roasting it either I'm roasting it past the cupping point. That's more of like a production style roast, at least for Spro. All right, 120 grams. So we did 200 grams of roast. So we still have a little bit of green. So in case we want to inspect the green during the cupping process later, I mean, if presuming you're doing this in a professional environment as evaluation for your coffees, right? All right. So now we're at 201 degrees. What I'm going to do is I'm going to boost it up to 10 amps. Go full power on it. Bring us up in temperature till we get to the start point. Moise wants to know, how long you rest the coffee for? Well, you know, I mean, typically we'll rest the coffee for a week, but we're gonna drink some of this coffee now, like after this. 202, we want a little more heat. Why we're gonna do some of that? Because, you know, a couple months ago, we did a test here on the live stream where we roasted coffee and brewed it immediately after roasting, and then brewed it every day subsequently for the next week. And in the professional world, most companies follow a quality control program where they'll roast coffee, let's say today, and by tomorrow they'll cup it and see if it's good or not. But I found that the flavor difference between tasting out of the roaster and the next day was very significant. And it really has challenged my assertions and my presumptions about how we do QC work. Let's pump that up. So I do think that you can get really great flavor experience of the coffees that you're roasting immediately after roasting, and then you won't really have that experience again for about another week. Now, we only did that one test. I really haven't followed up on it very heavily over the last few months. I have asked friends to pay attention to what they're doing and see if they found similar experiences that I did. I don't think anyone's really trying. I don't think anyone really cares. Everyone's like presumes that everything is just perfectly fine the way they're doing it. So, I think that's more what's happened out there. All right, so we're at 211 degrees. I'm going to bring it to 215 and then start. Every once in a while, the fluke will turn off. We're almost there. 214. 215. All right, here we go. Here we go. Let us reset our timer. Put this here. You can see that, right? I'm going to pour this in. It goes pretty fast. Start our timer. So 215, we are now cascading down in temperature. Craig says, I always drink right out of the cooling tray and every day after roasting because I'm always procrastinating. That is what happens when you only want to roast yourself. It's kind of like with food, I'm always like making my own stuff. It's like, I don't want to buy it. Put that over there. Get that out of our way. Now, like last time we were roasting pretty hard, so we're at 150 now. What I'm going to do now that when we get to the turning point, 144. 143, we're looking to see where does the temperature start to turn. And then once it starts to come up, we're going to lower the amps. 134, we are now a minute into it, so we should see a turn right about 1 minute 30 seconds. By the time we were talking about last time, we were already way up on the scale. Okay, so slowing down now, 131.65. Ooh, is it going to turn? 6, going up, there we go, 1 minute, 27 seconds. Now I'm going to turn down the heat to about 7.5. At least that's the hashtag on that. And I think that should give us decent amount of heat delivery that will help to extend our roast. We don't want to go too fast. I think last time we were going too fast. So at our turning point, or just past the turning point, the coffee's still green. Like I said, we're driving the heat, we're driving the moisture out of the coffee, and by driving, and as the coffee starts to dry, it'll start to change color. From this green point, we're going to get yellowing, and actually the yellowing phase is my personal favorite part of the phase, just because I love the fragrance of the coffee, that kind of hay, that grassy hay. I don't know why, I just like that. I just like that. It's a weird thing. You can see here already the color has started to change. Oh, and Craig was just saying something, which I just missed. The pocket science is roasters that have a good amount of conduction taste right. It tastes good right after roasting. Ah, okay, okay. The difficult part about using the phone is that the unlike on the computer where there's a sidebar that I can see all the comments constantly, on the phone it just pops up as like bubbles and then eventually dissipates. So I kind of miss it. So 3 minutes into it, we're at 152 degrees. And we're starting to get to that yellowing that I was talking about, right? Yeah, getting into that aroma that I like. I don't know why I like it. Perhaps it's not a great aroma. I just kind of enjoy it. So we're hitting that yellowing, right? We want to hit that yellowing right around 4 minutes. So that's a good thing that we're hitting it here. It's about 3 minutes, 32 seconds. So perhaps it's a little bit faster than we would like, but not like last time where like at 4 minutes we were already getting into the browning. So this is better. Oh yeah, this is still a little bit on the fast side. Let's turn that down just slightly. Or perhaps keep the heat and turn down some of the fan speed. On my production roaster, we don't really have fan speed control or drum speed control, so those are two factors that I don't have to like mess with, which I kind of like that better. Like I know a lot of roasters will argue about whether or not they should, the beauty of having those things, but what a good 170, coming up on 170 at 4 minutes, 35 seconds. Whoops. Sometimes you don't get a full sample in your trier. We're starting to get into the browning aspect of it, which is, if you ever see Arabic coffee, I think this is pretty much where Arabic coffee is, and that's actually burning my hand. This would be the kind of roast profile, 165 degrees or so, and nice and tan, but you're doing that over a long time. Craig says, I suspect nobody knows how to adjust the drum speed. Yeah, I don't think anyone really does. I think really what you want is just a good amount of speed to get a good fall, of the coffee, the rolling of the coffee. But what do I know? I've actually never really used it, so I can't say. I can't really say with any true expertise or experience on it. Like we've been installing Matt's Gießen W6A, and that supposedly has some variable control speed on the drum. I haven't played with it as much because we're still trying to get the gas installed on it. But this could, if you like roasting, this could be a fun, pleasant way to just sit down and enjoy yourself. Like especially a nice day like today. Like today is beautiful. Like it's beautifully sunny, clear skies, cool. Like right now it's 75, 77, so slightly cool but very nice and pleasant. You just sit here and I don't know, roast coffee, smoke cigars, and drink coffee all afternoon. Maybe I should do that. Huh. Anyway, all right, we're at 187, 88, almost on 7 minutes, so pretty good. Maybe I will do that today. So if you have any questions about the roasting, of course, let me know. I'm happy to try to chat about things. I've had this particular roaster for a good number of years now. I really, to be honest with you, I really haven't used it as much as I could have. Now, first pop, we're at 7 minutes 47 seconds. I just heard one pop, so let's see if we can get a little bit closer so that hopefully you can hear the pop as well. There, it's starting a little more popping. That's true. Roasting is a relaxing few minutes followed by the comments just. But I totally hear you on that. I totally hear you on that. But this one doesn't seem to crack as much. Now I'm really going to run this now. We're at 196. I'm probably going to run this more as a... I am planning on using this more in the future. I'm getting some popping, but not really a lot of popping. And I don't know if, usually I think there's more. Moy says, I have a small sample roaster at home, but a lot of coffees I'm unable to get first crack. I have sourced online for help. Oh my gosh, this thing is just driving me insane. But the sources say it might be because of the low altitude the coffee is grown in. It could be that. Now, here's the thing. So it's always like there may be, like in this particular example, we're not really getting a lot of cracking. And I think it could be that I just don't have a high volume of coffee. Most of the coffee we're roasting is in terms of pounds and pounds and pounds of coffee, right? 18 pounds or whatever at a time. So there's just so much more volume for you to deal with that you can hear it more. But in this kind of situation, maybe it's only going to be a situation where you're going to have a little bit of popping. Now, here's the thing. So one of the things as you're roasting more, you really, it's really a good idea it would be a really great idea for you to plot your time. So every minute on a piece of paper, record what your temperature is. When you hear the first crack, the first popping, record that temperature and time. And build your repertoire. We're at 190. We're really just stalling at 198, and we're almost at 11 minutes. I want to go a little bit longer. I want to go a little bit longer on that. Like it's really just kind of stalled out and it's reached an equilibrium, and we don't really have as much heat being delivered to it. It feels like when now it's starting to climb. I did push it up by another amp. Now we're starting to see some rise, but we're at 1125. So now we're really getting to the point where it's getting kind of elongated. I'm concerned. So we're going to stop. Because right now the temperature's hovering, and I think that the way it's hovering because of the ambient temperature around us. All right, so let's stop it now. 1147. We're going to turn down the amp meter so that we're not really producing much heat. Turn this back on. Turn this up for the heat. I mean the fan, and then put this on top to cool. So what's the best way to approach that? I would say that, so by doing all of this logging, and you can, because a lot of it has to do with, well, I said earlier that when I started roasting, one of my mentors that helped me, he was like, you only have a analog exhaust gauge, and you should not use anything else for at least a year. And so I did that, and I did it for 8 years. But what that did was it forced me to really learn how to roast by feel, to really feel it and understand the roasting process. So like, yes, we're looking for first crack at a certain point. We're looking for yellowing at a certain point. We're looking for these different things at a certain point. But if we don't get those, like if you don't get to hear the crack, if it's not as pronounced, then you have to be able to figure out how to do it. And the only way to figure out how to do it is really just to do it over and over again and taste. And it may be that with such small quantities of like 200 grams or so, or 100 grams, you're only going to get just a few that are cracking, or you're only going to hear so much of the crack. Whereas when you're talking about anywhere between, I don't know, 5 pounds and up, or 3 pounds and up, there's a lot more physical beans to crack to amplify its noise. So it's really just a matter of roasting and learning. Like in this case, I was thinking that when I wasn't hearing necessarily some of the cracking, I'll rely more on the temperature. However, the temperature, in this case, we weren't really getting we were barely getting to 200 degrees total. And if I was roasting by temperature on a larger roaster, I'm usually roasting somewhere between 205 to maybe up to 215, depending on the roast, depending on how it's going. There's a variety of factors involved there. But in this case, we weren't really going to break 200, but we're already at 11 minutes. We're already past 11 minutes. I'm like, well, that's a bit long. The coffee is looking fairly roasted. It's still pretty hot to handle. So I just decided that I think that we're at a point where we can stop the roast. We have probably had enough development. Now, I don't know for that for sure. I'm totally flying by the seat of my pants on this one. I'm just guessing. Part of it's intuition, part of it's based on experience. And the other side of it is not. So the only way to know how your results will is to taste. And so that's why I think it's really important for you to taste your coffees. Of course, if you're making it for yourself, you're going to taste them. But to also be critical about what you're tasting and be open to like, okay, and by making notes, you'll know what you did in that particular roast so that you can reflect on it later and be like, okay, so I like this roast, or I didn't like this roast, or I didn't like this aspect, and you can go back and see, okay, so what happened in this roast? It was, maybe there wasn't, maybe it's not as, there's no flavors that you're looking for, perhaps because, well, the roast was really fast. It tastes kind of baked. Well, perhaps there was a period, like remember the end of the last roast, when I adjusted the amp meter too far down, so we kind of got this plateau, this stalling, that could add like a baked character to it. So if I'm tasting a baked character in the coffee, then perhaps that could be the culprit. And so those are just things that as you taste and as you roast and you look at your notes, you look at your records, you can see that you can start to correlate where the issues may be and work on improvement. I didn't, normally under most roasting circumstances, I will take those kind of notes. In this particular situation where we're doing this, I'm talking to you, I just decided to eliminate that part. But really, I would normally do that in my normal working life. Just trying to eliminate one more thing for me to talk about and like do while we're doing it. So Moy says, my roaster doesn't have a temperature probe. Is there another way I can tell? So, you know, well, let's then, if you don't have temperature probe, let's look at time. Okay, so if we have, since you have temperature probe, things like the turning point make no sense, but will make no sense. But try to set up your roaster. What kind of roaster are you using, by the way? But try to set up your roaster in a way where you're applying the heat to the coffee. Like in this type of roaster, or like in our larger roasters, ideally we would like to see the coffee start to turn yellow right around 4 minutes. Remember I said that earlier in this roast that, oh, we're right about 3 minutes, 37 seconds. It's turning yellow, that's a good thing. If you can see that yellowness at 4 minutes, okay, good. Then if you start to hear some of the popping, and it may be only a couple pops, that might be all that is, and you get that around 9 minutes, then those are good average metric milestones to use if you have no measuring devices whatsoever. And so then it's a matter of, once you reach the first crack, then it's just a matter of looking at the color and trying to determine, what color do I want? Where should I stop? And then once you reach that point, see if you can, see if your machine allows you to stop at that point. Some machines I don't think allow you to stop in that way, but that's how I would approach it, I think. You know, if I didn't have the ability to measure temperature of the coffee or temperature of the exhaust, because the exhaust temperature will be affected by the temperature of the coffee. It's not going to be a one-to-one thing, but it's going to be relatively close. Moist, oh gosh, let me pull this. And then Craig said that people with Loring's, very noisy roaster, just pick an arbitrary bean temperature. You know, I have noted, I've in the times that I've sat with people that ran Loring's, I thought that I remembered hearing first the cracking of the coffee. I don't know if that's true or not, but it's been a while. But I don't know. I don't know. That's a good point. My roaster doesn't have a sampler or a temperature probe, so I said, oh, okay, well, it solely depend on sound. Okay, sound. I use an air roaster too. It has see-through glass walls, but I still can't really tell when. So since you do have the see-through glass walls, then use that as your reference point, because that'll be helpful to at least for you to see that the time, the color change, as well as what kind of time reference point are you. Now, if you have there's this roaster I'm planning on using tomorrow. I don't remember. It's in the storage. I have to go get it to shoot the thumbnail for it. It sounds like it might be the same one. Like it's a black one that has this top that's glass. And you twist this thing on. That thing tends to. There's no way to control that, right? Like at least I haven't figured it out. That tends to roast the coffee in 6 minutes, which I think is too fast. But you know, it's up. You'll have to. Unfortunately, it's just a matter of like, you know, you have to try to play with whatever you have available to you to make and find the best path within that. Now, certainly there are going to be times when it may not be possible to overcome the limitations of your machine. And in those situations, you know, you just either have to live with it or, unfortunately, perhaps look towards a new machine. Like this one is a nice one. Another one you might consider is called the Hookie. The Hookie uses a butane burner. I haven't used that one. I was actually going to buy the Hookie before I bought this. When Nanelle called me and she's like, "Hey, do you need a roaster?" I was like, "Yes, I do. Yes, I do." I decided to buy this. But the Hookies are very nice, I think. Anything that gives you control. I like to have more control over the roast. If you're thinking about buying the roaster, yeah, look for controllability. That's what's important. All right, let's see here. Any Can you see the color of the beans through the roast? My air roaster is so noisy that I go, oh yeah, that's difficult. That's difficult. Have you heard of Power Roaster? It's the one they use and have a Facebook page. You know, I have not heard of the Power Roaster. You're the first person that's ever told me this. Of course, but I have to be honest. Historically, I'm not very well informed on a lot of the stuff that's in the home market. I'm barely informed on what's happening in the professional market. So a lot of times I'll hear from you guys about what is new or what is hot. But Power Roaster, I'll try to look it up for tomorrow. All right, so now we're letting this cool down. Let's have a look at our coffee. We do want to, what do you call it? We want to weigh it out and see. 103, so about the same amount of weight moisture loss, a little bit less. We had 102, 103, I mean, it's negatable, the amount that's different. Now, it does look a bit on the lightly darker side, like a little bit darker, like I would like it to be. I think I would like it to be a little bit less roasted. But we're going to find out what it's really like. So, push this aside here while that thing cools down. Turn that off. We're going to let that cool down. We're going to put this in a bag. And then we're going to, meanwhile, let me turn this on. All right, we're gonna heat up some water. We're gonna measure out 24 grams. Great. And then we're gonna grind it. And you're gonna get to see me do what I hate to do the most, grind by hand. Of course, 24 grams does not fit in, or just barely fits in the Probat, which is always a disappointing feature. Like, when you fill your grinder, like that's a lot to grind. I always hate that. All right, here we go. Was there anything commented saying? Oh, you use the Power Roaster. Okay, gotcha. Yeah, I will look that up and see. Yeah, I'm sorry. I don't know why you guys are doing this. There is no joy in my life when I have to do this hand grinding thing. Like I said, I would rather pre-grind, put it into a Ziploc bag, and carry it with me to wherever I'm going in the world than do this in the field. But as far as grinders go, I like the Probat. Nice and compact. Now, I know there's a lot of people out there that will argue about, like, oh, the Probat is not very good. You have to buy whatever grinder, 1Z Presso or the Comandante, and those are all nice grinders. But you know what? If I'm going to carry a grinder, I like the compactness of this Probat. And the grind quality is good, the build quality is good. And I think there's always a compromise, right? Like, if I'm going to use a hand grinder, I'm going to use it in the field. And what I'm looking for is freshly ground coffee. That's fairly decently ground. I don't need to have it be 0.00 whatever accurate, because I'm probably going to be in a situation where I wouldn't have access, or I would have difficult access to really nice coffee to begin with. So having my own coffee freshly ground is already an incredible jump over what I would be facing wherever I happen to be. Oh, is it done? I'm almost done. Oh, that wasn't too bad. Not good enough that I would want to do this on a regular basis. Is that it? Yeah, all right. 24 grams wasn't terrible. I don't know what grind setting this is. Should be kind of a medium-ish grind. Oh, medium-ish grind setting. So we're going to use the Hario switch. I bought this in Japan from Tokyo Hands. If you ever go to Tokyo, Tokyo Hands is this department store that has all kinds of home stuff. Oh, that's already going. And really great deals on their products. Now, of course, it's a great deal on their product. Like the Switch is a great deal there, like super cheap compared to here. But of course, you've had to fly to Japan. Although there are now ways to order online to get your stuff. All right, so I'm just going to take a regular paper filter, fold it over, Melita style filter, put it in here, put in the coffee. Kioni says, I travel with my Lagom Option O mini small. Oh, nice. Yeah, I don't mind traveling with a grinder if it's electric. I do mind traveling if it's like this. All right, so now we've got our coffee. And we're going to pour in here a little bit. The MSO. Oh no! You have to make sure this tab is up. That's irritating. It's a little bit on the fine side. Maybe that's too fine. Oh, that's right. This is the O2 one or the O1 or whatever size. So it doesn't hold the full 350 grams. So we will just have to do a little bit of a... Maybe I should order a new one. We will have to do a bit of a different style. I probably should just put this on top here to begin with. See, this is the nice thing about the scientific scales. It has this rim on it so that it doesn't spill as much everywhere as it could. All right, 1 minute, 14 seconds. So what we're going to do is we're just going to just do the offset. So we put whatever amount, 200 some grams of water. We're going to let that steep, and then when we finally pull it through, we're going to... Ow, that really did burn. Look at that. That did totally burn me when I touched. That's why you wear long sleeves. I remember one time at our old roastery that didn't have air conditioning. Actually, most of our roasteries never have air conditioning. At least my roasteries never do. It was so hot one day in the middle of summer. I was like, I'm going to go shirtless. And, you know, I hadn't really thought about it because I never had done it topless, right? And I'm all alone at the roastery, of course. And man, it's blazing. It was like 90 to 95 degrees inside the building. Fans running, roasting. Drop the load into the cooling tray. And I'm not thinking about it. I just lean up against it because I always lean up against the cooling tray. And oh man, I got a burn. Like right across my tummy. And I was like, oh man. It was terrible. It was like this. It was like this. It was totally like this. It's like I'm back in the kitchen again, getting like burns. Terrible. 2 minutes, 31 seconds. So we're going to open the valve at 3 minutes, 30 seconds to allow the water flow to go through. And then whatever balance we have left, we're going to balance it out with some water to get the right mixture of flavor. So this is, again, the Rwenzori, but the Rwenzori, now I have to thread my head. Ow! You know, the foolish thing is I'm wearing sleeves. I should just put my sleeve down to help protect my arm, instead of trying to be fashionably cool with them rolled up. Whatever. This is the Rwenzori Bugoye washed from Western Uganda. 2023 crop. So last year's crop, but really a nice coffee, like really pretty coffee. All right, 3 minutes, 30 seconds. Let's open the valve. As you can see, it's flowing through now, flowing through, flowing through. The switch. I know people love the switch. I know people love Hario products. I don't know if I love Hario products. I mean, they're good products. This is not terribly thrilling, is it? Yeah, if we look at the coffee, I do, like I said, it looks dark. I mean, even in here, it looks too dark. I think we went too far with the roasting. Like Craig said, you know, I think it was Craig that said this, that, you know, there's roasting is relatively common except for the last few minutes, and it's all about intense concentration. And by me chatting all the time, it's more difficult to have that intense concentration. Which is why if you go to coffee for roasteries and you see the roastery, like the roasters don't really want to talk to anyone. Partially probably because they're a little bit socially awkward, but also because they got to focus, right? Especially there's a point where you really just gotta even when at the roastery, when I'm roasting, like if people come over, it's like, I'm happy to talk to the early part of the roast, but the last part of the roast, you really have to pay attention. All right, so that's good. Now we're gonna add water. We're just under 300 grams, so we're gonna add water to the 350 mark. And that will bring us to our brew. Let's get our little glass here for our elixir. Some good clarity in the brew. So if you can taste your roasts as you roast them, it'll help you to understand like what changes you might need to make, or how to evaluate and troubleshoot what your roast profiles are. Now, also one thing is that the more you get, like right now, I haven't used this roaster for a good, well, since we closed the roastery, so at least 6 months. And I probably didn't really use it before then for at least, let's say a year. I haven't really used this. And so the more you use your roaster, the more you get used to it, the more you feel it, the more it works. Like on our production roasters, because I've used them for so long, I feel so in tune with them. It's a lot easier to roast them those than here, because I already know how, I can anticipate, I've worked with it so long, I can anticipate how it performs. So as you work with your roaster more, you'll also become, the word I want to use is ma, and only Keone would understand that, but the more in tune, the more connected you become with your roaster. Huh. There's a bit of a tea character to this coffee at the moment. I'm trying to think of what kind of tea. Like a Darjeeling kind of character. I was concerned that maybe too roasty, but it's not really roasty at all. kind of creaminess to it as well. There's a character to this coffee that reminds me of another coffee that we have produced for us called the Prola Negra, which is a anaerobic fermented coffee. Now this is a wash coffee, not an anaerobic, but it's kind of giving me at this very moment similar creamy, milky characters that I would have in the Prola Negra. Huh. I kind of like it. We will have to taste this more in the week to come, or maybe just next week, to see how it turns out. All right, I know we're pushing 75. It looks like we're pushing almost 80 minutes. So, I guess that's going to be it for today. Thank you very much for tuning in. Back again tomorrow with more coffee roasting. I'm going to try to go pull that other roaster out so that we can have a comparison between this roaster that has a bit of controllability versus this other one that's a little bit more, that's really geared towards home roasters and at a very affordable price point. That is, Keely says that I think that with anything used on a regular basis, with all things the same, I can pull better shots with my friend. Exactly, for sure. The more you're comfortable with your equipment, the easier it is for you to work with. I totally agree with you on that. But we're back again tomorrow with a different roaster. Hopefully the weather will be holding out. Or if it rains, then maybe we won't do that. Maybe we'll save that for a Friday. It has to be nice weather. Otherwise, I might just be electrocuting myself. Which could be great television here. Enjoyed the combo here. Thank you, Asian Dev. Appreciate you. Oh, hope your espresso was good. All right, Moist, thank you very much for tuning in. All right, so that's going to be it for today. Thank you very much for tuning in. Back again tomorrow. And hope you have a wonderful day or wonderful evening out there in Asia. Hopefully it's not too hot. All right, have a great one. See you next time.